Have you ever seen kindergarten or prep students go to school so excitedly, just for 10 years later to have all that excitement completely disappeared? Education is the first of many social institutions that they will face that promote an oppressive society. When they eventually leave school, they go into the workplace where it is very similar attitudes, such as the boss knows everything and the worker knows nothing. Freire mentions in his Pedagogy of the Oppressed that education is a system that promotes an oppressive society. By reinforcing such attitudes and practices as the teacher teaches and the students are taught, the teacher talks and the students listen, the teacher knows everything and the students know nothing, this places teachers in a hegemonic position of power. This discourse leads students into preparing themselves for life in a society where they will always be oppressed. But as future health and physical education teachers, we want to remove the oppressive learning environment from the classroom.
We can use our social imagination to approach lessons with a critical pedagogy. Previous to our knowledge on the pedagogy of the oppressed, we would approach lessons with values and attitudes based on our own habitus.
We know from previous case studies that this fails to accommodate for all learners and can create inequalities within the classroom. This could be the underlying cause of many health problems for students.
However, applying our social imagination with our knowledge of the pedagogy of the oppressed in combination with Sallis's socio-ecological model, we can approach our lessons using a problem-posing education.
This creates a passive multi-level intervention in changing both the students' and teachers' own habitus whilst challenging the oppressive learning environment.
In doing so, students can become self-directed in their learning, which in turn will help us promote being active for life.
Therefore, we have designed a HPE lesson sequence that challenges Freire's oppressed pedagogy. June Caldwell stated that, once you witness an injustice, you are no longer an observer but a participant. As future HPE teachers, it is our role in the classroom to challenge these discourses, and this is evident in our lesson sequence.
The theme for the lesson sequence is Active for Life. The lesson sequence incorporates an inquiry task using heart rate monitors and then focuses on the students using their knowledge to create a poster focusing on health and wellbeing in their local school community. The lesson sequence links to the Year 9-10 HPE Australian curriculum and links to 2 content descriptors.
Plan, implement and critique strategies to enhance the health, safety and wellbeing of their communities. Design, implement and evaluate personalised plans for improving or maintaining their own and others' physical activity and fitness levels. Continuing on from our previous case study, the context for this assignment is set in Waverley using a grade 9-10 HPE class at the fictional Waverley High School. The demographic of Waverley is the following. The population of Waverley is 1,545, with 16% having completed Year 12, 5% being Indigenous and 4% being born overseas. Lesson 1 is 50 minutes with links to ACPMP 102 and AITSL Standards 1.1 and 1.5. The focus of this lesson aims for students to be introduced to types of unconventional exercise and how this affects your heart rate. Activities in this lesson will focus on the discussion of what heart rate is and means, what it means to have low or high resting heart rate, and what impacts it has on your physical fitness. Students will then discuss ways in which we measure heart rate before looking into unconventional ways that we can look at heart rate, such as working in the garden or completing jobs at home that require physical activity. This lesson is an introduction for future lessons in the sequence and will focus on breaking the educational colonialism mould of a HPE class. For a school such as Waverley High, the physical activity needs of the students represent playing sport and games. This lesson aims to get students to think outside what is considered physical activity exercises by getting students to think of ways to exercise without even knowing they are, such as gardening. By introducing the students to heart rate, we are aiming to challenge the students' assumptions that the only way to work your heart rate is to participate in fitness circus and sporting games. This will lead into the second lesson, which has an inquiry focus with students undertaking 2 different variations of physical activity.
For the second lesson, the class is divided into 2 groups. One group will be in the school garden and the other group in the gym doing a fitness circuit. The students are required to work in pairs, one wearing a heart rate monitor whilst working in a garden or participating in a fitness circuit. The students will measure the heart rate every 5 minutes and record the data. After 30 minutes of recording, the partners will swap so that each individual has a turn measuring their heart rate. As teachers, we are never certain as to what knowledge and skills students will require in the future. We do know, however, that they will face some problems. By requiring the students to gather their own data, we as HPE teachers help to develop individual learners and problem solvers.
This is a 50-minute theory-based lesson and follows on from the previous practical lesson. It will encourage self-regulation and problem-solving thoughts from the students. The lesson involves briefly revisiting knowledge taught in the past, analysing data collected from the previous practical lesson, and a whole class discussion about conclusions drawn from the data and how these conclusions can affect the lives of people. Opposing the idea of the banking concept of education where, according to Freire, the students know nothing and learn, and the teachers know everything and teach, our lesson encourages students to explore different ways that they could partake in physical activity passively. This lesson in particular promotes the use of problem solving, and the theory taught is supported by the previous practical lesson, giving the students a clearer understanding of what physical activity is. Newson, Surskis and Adair constructed a study that compared the problem-solving skills of two groups of nursing students. One group was taught under a problem-based education method, the other was a more traditional method of education. They found that there was a statistical significance of problem-solving skills and locus of control in favour of those who undertook problem-based learning. The importance of heart rate will be covered once again at the start of the lesson, and then we will move into a brief summary of the previous lesson, which involved gardening and a fitness circuit as part of a practical experiment. The data that was recorded for the experiment will be incorporated onto a graph shown at the front of the classroom. Based on the results from the graph, a class discussion will then take place. Students are encouraged to think about other ways they can reach the daily recommendation of physical activity without using exercise or sport as examples. It will also be important to explain to students that small portions of physical activity may be spread across the day in order to reach what the Australian government deems as a healthy amount of activity and does not have to include moderate to high intensity levels of exercise.
For the final lesson, students are required to work in their original pairs to create a multimodal health campaign for health and fitness in their local community. The health campaign is to be presented on an A3 poster and has to include the statistics found from the HR experiment. The poster should promote being active for life and include how there are multiple ways to engage in physical activity, for example gardening. The students are then required to present their poster to one of the younger year groups in their school. Not only can they understand and identify how to be active for life, but they can implement and promote what they have learnt to other people.
Freire states that the pedagogy of the oppressed promotes a culture of silence. Due to individuals losing their creative thinking, they are merely sheep to the hegemonic people in power who dictate how they live their life. Once an individual is educated, they can gradually perceive personal and social reality as well as the contradictions in it, become conscious of his or her own perception of that reality, and deal critically with it. If we can create independent learners from our students, we can help promote student-regulated learning so that the pedagogy of the oppressed and the hegemonic power of the teacher can be overcome. Mulner and Kelly argue that the main purpose of education should be to create independent and creative learners and thinkers. By structuring the lessons as so, we help to promote independent learners so that they can approach any task that is required of them. Not only can we do this, but we help to remove the stigma that to be healthy you have to engage in exercise. We know from our own habitus that not everyone enjoys physical education, so by promoting physical activity that does not involve leisure time, we are able to accommodate for all students.
A research journal by Flynn 2012 discusses the effectiveness of creating an oppressive-free classroom. Her students expressed the positivity of this type of classroom. One girl saying she loved the experience and that she felt she finally got to say what she has been wanting to say for years. Another student said they believe it helps them understand each other more.
However, studies have shown that the likeliness of critical pedagogy being implemented depends on the level of experience a teacher has. Mahmoud Darabi and Koda Bakish found that there was a significant relationship between a teacher's level of experience and their awareness of critical pedagogy. According to Conway and Clark, there are 3 stages teachers go through in their professional development. Stage 1 involves the teacher being mainly concerned on presenting themselves as best as possible so that their students will like them. Stage 2 has the teacher place more emphasis on classroom management and strategies to help them achieve this. For Stage 3, teachers finally start to follow critical views of education. At this stage, teachers are more likely to implement critical pedagogy into their lessons.